This is from the Jaguar Queen of Copal, one in a long series of Victorian thrillers starring Miss Marian Halcombe, her husband, Theophilus Camlet, and her brother-in-law, Walter Hartright. In this bit, Theo has been swept away by a river deep in the jungle of British Honduras. Walter is telling of how he and his old boss, Sir Ambridge Skillington, are still chained on an island in the middle of that river, waiting for rescue. A week after Camlet's death, we heard again the squeal and groan of the crazy wooden ladder in the side ravine. Skillington frowned. "It's too soon for the native women, Hartright. I fear this may be the ironmonger." The word struck ice into my heart. My shackle was nowhere near rubbed through, but to a professional eye, the work I had done on it would be instantly obvious. A metal worker would have the tools to refasten the shackle again. And, worse yet, I would be chained to Skillington's enormous rock. We would never escape. I looked at my bonds. 6 feet of crude chain was attached to my shackle. The padlock affixed to the end of it, the end of poor Camlet's chain, 6 feet more. I had 12 feet of iron here. I weighed the heavy links in my hands and drew a deep breath and made it my decision. "Skillington," I said, "I'm going to make my break." "What's that you said?" "I'll use these chains and beat our visitors down, or strangle them when they land. Then I'll take the boat and cross over and run for it. If I allow them to repair my bonds and attach me to your stone, years may pass before I have a better opportunity." "My boy," Skillington spoke soberly, "have you ever killed a man with your hands?" I had not, but I have boxed and wrestled in youth, so the striving of man against man was not unknown to me. "Desperation will lend me strength," I said. "Do you, Skillington, go over to the far side and wash your shirt or something. Be visibly not involved in my attempt. Then you may claim ignorance and surprise, and that I acted without consulting you." He knew well, none better, why I had to do this. He shook my hand in his larger one. "God go with you, Hartright." If Camlet were here, he would have made a comment about whether God would indeed bless an attempt to slay with an iron chain. In the perpetual twilight of our deep ravine, I could see them now. 2 men, not the native women. The pale shapes of their hats and trousers were visible against the dark water as they untied the boat. I had to remember to steal their clothing as well. Trousers and boots would be useful in my flight through the jungle. I selected my spot, not too close to where they would beach the boat, but close enough, and arranged the length of chain in my hands. The padlock was massive, a great, crude thing of native manufacture. If I doubled my chain and swung it hard around, the padlock's weight could probably crack a man's skull. I must have looked like a desperate ruffian, cold-bloodedly planning murder. My hair and beard, unshorn for months, were nearly as long as Skillington's, and my rags hung on me. I had probably lost a stone in weight. I dared not look at them, these men who, all unknowing, were living the last minutes of their lives, lest my hand falter and my will weaken. I stood with my bearded head bowed, staring at the ripples lapping the limestone shore. They shifted and grew as the paddles splashed nearer, closer, closer. Suddenly there was a cry and a splash. "Twinforth, you ass!" someone sputtered in English. "Let me get out first." "I'm so sorry, sir." I turned. Floundering in the shallows were 2 white men in full jungle gear, trousers, bush jackets, hats, and machetes. The one just splashing onto the shore had a neatly trimmed light brown beard and sturdy brown leather boots, but the round spectacles glinting under his spruce jungle hat's brim. "Camlet?" "Hartright, how are you?" he said cheerily. "May I present Mr. Twinforth, a clergyman?" I flung my arms around him with a shout of joy. "Camlet! Theo! Great God! How in thunder did you survive? We thought you drowned and gone." Skillington bounded forward as well and clapped Camlet on the back so hard that he staggered. "Delighted you live to tell the tale, sir. Never say that the underground river has an outlet." "All rivers wind safe to sea," Camlet said, "or in this case, a lake on the other side of these heights. It took me about 5 hours to slide through, and when I came out into the light again, Marian was there waiting for me." "Now that I do not believe," I said, grinning so widely my face hurt. "How on earth did she achieve that?" "How does she do any of the things she does? We will see her this very day, and you may ask her. This is Charles Twinforth, by the way, Marian's clergyman. Twinforth, this is Hartright and Sir Ambridge Skillington." "How do you do, Reverend?" Skillington said, shaking his hand. "Is Mrs. Camlet so devout as to require her own clergyman?" "I was to assist her in her travels," Twinforth said, "but she manages so well it's not a position with very many duties." "Such tasks that you have are onerous, however." Camlet lifted some coils of rope out of the boat. "I'm sure you did not sign on to float down an underground river." "Mrs. Camlet is an unusual female," Twinforth agreed. "Now, Skillington, if you will lift your rock into this boat, we may begin. Following your excellent example, I've given your escape some serious thought, but we must step briskly." "The boat, to keep my millstone from drowning me," Skillington said, hoisting the stone into the empty craft. "And to keep it there in case she turns turtle, we'll wind your ankle chain around and around the entire craft, and lash the stone in with rope. I'm afraid that you yourself, Skillington, will have to cling to the outside. All 4 of us clinging to the boat will swamp it. I have prudently provided another craft for us." Camlet was rapidly shedding coat, waistcoat, hat, and boots, and Twinforth was doing the same. "There's some luncheon in that bag there, if you will open it and share it out while we wait for the—" From upstream there came a huge noise, several great crashes, and then a final titanic splash. Camlet seized the end of one of his coils of rope and set out towards it, swimming strongly in spite of his shirt and trousers. Peering through the dimness, I saw a mass low in the water. It was a cut section of logwood, perhaps 10 feet long. When Camlet hitched the rope to it, we easily drew it in. "We had 2 native guides leading us here," Camlet said, splashing to dry land again. "They cut a log for us and tossed it into the ravine. We shall float through clinging to it." "You dazzle me, sir." Skillington's grin was white in the red-gold tangle of his beard. "You thought of everything." "If we devour our luncheon, we can use the bag to hold our gear. Marian has strictly charged me not to lose my boots. She brought them all the way from England for me." "And why this great hurry?" Camlet was threading a rope through the hole in Skillington's rock before lashing it into the boat. More slowly, Twinforth was knotting more line around the log to create some handholds. "Well, of course, if the natives hear of our escape, they'll thwart us," Camlet pointed out. "But more importantly, we must traverse the underground river and arrive at the lake while the sun is up. The ladies are on watch, but can only glimpse us in daylight. The lake is infested with crocodiles, and I don't want to spend the night with them." "Ah, your reasoning is impeccable. I had forgotten about the nasty local wildlife." In half an hour, our simple preparations were complete. My chain was wound around the log and secured with rope. Twinforth's and Camlet's clothes and boots were stashed in the bag and lashed into the dugout beside the stone. The lightest of us, Twinforth, was allotted to hang on to the boat with Skillington, while Camlet and I would be supported by the log. A short length of line connected the 2 halves of our party. "We shall have but little light," Camlet warned. "There's a fissure or 2, but most of the way is entirely underground. Stay with the heaviest flow of the current. When I went through, it was at full flood, but such is not now the case." A fearful thought that the river would dry up and leave us stranded deep under the earth. I waded in, feeling with my bare feet for the place where the bottom fell away. "Cling to the rear half of your craft," Skillington advised. "Let the wood take any impact with rocks or obstacles. Fend off at need with your feet, not your hands." Without more ado, we pushed off. First Camlet and myself, and then Skillington and Twinforth. The current was gentle but steady. and we were drawn towards the fearsome downstream opening, carved into the shape of an open, toothy mouth. Camlet grinned up at it without fear. I shall not be sorry to never see this again. I also. Camlet, now that we have a moment, I'm so very glad you were not slain. Your loss sank my heart. And I'm profoundly grateful that you're alive. When I was swept away in the flood, I looked for you, but you were not behind me. Until this day, he could not have known whether Skillington and I were drowned or not, but the carved teeth were above us now, and we slid down on our log into the cavern of the underground river. For a while, the half circle of light behind us was visible, and then it was utterly dark. The only sound was an occasional ripple or splash. It was difficult to believe we were even in motion without any landmark or sensation. "Artbright, are you there?" Skillington's voice boomed from behind us, surprisingly near. "We're well," Camlet replied. "Twinforth, are you bearing up?" "I shall never let your wife persuade me to go anywhere again," the young clergyman said. "This is fearful." "I survived it," Camlet said, unruffled. "So may you." I had to laugh into the Stygian darkness. "You should know, Twinforth, that Camlet and his wife are very close, true mates." "She sounds a frightful female," Skillington grumbled. "But look, is that light?" We gaped upwards at the thread of light, far above and to one side. A crack in the earth let a few gleams trickle down to us. For a moment we could see each other, our faces white above the gloomy water, before we drifted past and were immured in night again. The water, unwarmed by any sun, was colder than one would have liked. As time passed, my hands and feet grew numb with the chill, and then, gradually, a noise came to the ear, the sound of falling water, pouring over a rapid. Strain my eyes to peer ahead as I would, I could see nothing. Nearer and nearer, and then, suddenly, we were falling, tumbling over and over in a rush of water. Grimly, I clung to the log with all my strength. If once I lost my grip, the shackle and chain would tow me behind, and if I did not drown, I would be battered to death. Rock scraped past my shoulder, too quickly to be painful, and we were somersaulting and plunged deep, deep into a pool. I could feel no bottom. It felt as if we were plummeting down to the center of the earth. I held my breath, praying that we would float to the top, and after a long, terrifying moment, my craft burst up into the air again. "Camlet?" There was no reply. I groped frantically in the utter darkness over the wet log and its rope bindings. "Camlet!" "I'm here," he said, sputtering and choking from further away. "Keep speaking, so I may find you." In the stress of my feelings, I was vehement. "Why the devil did you not bind yourself to this log as well? And the clergyman? Have you lost your spectacles? If they've fallen off, you'll be as blind as a bat until we return to Britain." No, they're secure. I tied them on." The splash of swimming, and then I felt his cold hands fumbling over my own. "There was no such drop 6 days ago. The flood must have carried me right over it. Skillington, are you there?" The line connecting our two crafts had snapped. From some distance away in the rushing darkness came the other party's halloo. Both their voices, so we knew they had survived. Gradually, the sound of rapids lessened as we were swept further downstream. The perpetual dark reigned supreme again, broken only by the rush and swish of water. I lost all sense of the passage of time, yet it was impossible to doze or even relax slightly, lest I lose my grip. The need for constant alertness was almost more exhausting than trekking. But suddenly, as abruptly as if it were poured out of a bottle onto our heads, sunlight descended. We were through, passing from deepest dark into a blazing afternoon sunshine that made us blink and wince. The water widened into a lake, a vast blue expanse that could have been an ocean. So overwhelmed were we with the passage from dark to light, from narrow to wide. After so many weeks imprisoned in twilight, the sunshine was painfully bright. And there, in a dugout canoe, was the very last sight in all the world I expected to see. A respectable English girl with freckles on her nose sat in a lavender plaid dress and a broad straw Panama hat, crocheting lace in the shade of a large man's umbrella. This might have been an English brook and not the deepest jungle. Sarah? Camlet, you didn't say my sister had come along. At the sight of us, Sarah's jaw dropped in a cry of surprise. Good Lord! Walter, is that you? When did you last cut your hair? You look absolutely dreadful, like Robinson Crusoe. Without wasting a moment, she crammed her lace into the work bag at her waist. Then she snapped the umbrella closed and began to wave it, signaling. Hello, Sarah, Theo said. I'm delighted to see you. And what a blessing, here's the rest of our party. The little boat had suffered more in its passage than our humble log. Its plank sides were battered and broken. Twinforth clung to it, more dead than alive, but Skillington stared at Sarah with his mouth open. Sarah, may I present Sir Ambridge Skillington, the man we've all been searching for. Skillington, Miss Hartright here is Hartright's younger sister. Miss Hartright, a pleasure, Skillington said. Forgive me for not taking your hand, it's rather wet. And what fool was it who dragged a decent English girl to this God-forsaken land? Twinforth, was this your conception? Thank God, no, Twinforth said wanly. It was my dear wife to blame, Camlet said happily, and here she comes. I'm afraid we'll need assistance to climb into the canoes. Do you see any crocodiles, Sarah? Not a one, she reported, although I suppose they could be sneaking up underwater on you. This gave my feet, dangling in the depths with their weight of chain, a very queer feeling. Twinforth moaned in terror, but already a second canoe was speeding up to us. Marian's hectoring voice clearly audible across the water as she urged the native paddlers to their best work. The moment she was near enough, she cried, Theo! You see, my love, I told you so. It was not much of a task, really. I'm still very cross with you. How I ever let you persuade me. Oh, be swift and get into this canoe. There are others in worse case, my dear, who ought to be first. He looked over the log at me. Oh, great heavens. Walter, I didn't recognize you in that beard. Oh, you poor man. She leaned over the thwarts and gripped my hands, gazing down at me with such dismay in her dark eyes that I knew I must look doleful indeed. Flores, please brace the canoe. Mr. Hartright is going to climb in. With tremendous difficulty and splashing, we were helped one by one into the canoes, which had to be counterbalanced on the opposite side lest they capsize under the operation. In my rags and Skillington's length of native cloth, far more of our persons were on view than was really proper for my sister. Marian incautiously hauled me upwards by the back of my shirt and ripped the entire ragged garment in half. I did not like in the least the pistol she was brandishing in the other hand, nor the way Sarah sat with the furled umbrella at the ready. It seemed a very poor weapon against hungry reptiles. Not until we tumbled into the bottom of the canoes were our bonds visible, my cheap ankle shackle and Skillington's more serious chains. Both Sarah and Marian shed tears of pity at the sight. I was able to unwind my chain from our faithful log, but it was simplest to take the little boat in tow and not to try transfer Skillington's stone. If we slipped in moving it from one boat to the other, he would be dragged to the bottom in an instant. The sun was setting, the swift, brief twilight of this latitude, and before it should become quite dark, we hastened to paddle to the haven of Campo Lagarto.